So this is the first fitting on my client, and in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to sew an underbust bustier. So guys, in this tutorial it is going to be in two phases. Let me say two tutorial in one. I'm going to teach you how to make a skin illusion bustier with a bra cup. Then I'll also show you how to sew the one with a padded bustier. So the first thing that I'm going to do now is to arrange what I'm going to use to cut the clothes. Then the first is that I'll use my pattern paper and I'll measure my shoulder. And in this tutorial I'll show you how to sew a cut together sleeve, a cut together cap sleeve. So first of all, I'll mark my shoulder. My shoulder is 15 inches, then divided by 2 is 7.5 plus half inch, and I've marked that. From the shoulder I'll mark 1 inch for shoulder slant and 8 inches for my armhole. Then I'll connect my shoulder slant and I'll also connect my armhole line. Then I'll measure my neck width. My neck width is 3.5 and my neck depth is 4 inches. I'll connect my neckline. My neckline is a round neck, so I'll go ahead and connect my neckline. The next thing that I'll do right now is to mark out my armhole, and from there I'll be able to draft my cut together cap sleeve. Like I said, this dress has a cut together cap sleeve, so it's an opportunity to learn how to cut a cut together cap sleeve. So from my shoulder line I'll extend by 3 inches. I'll extend my shoulder line by 3 inches, and from that point I'll come down by 2 inches. From the point where I measured my shoulder slant, I'll come down by 2 inches also, and from there I'll curve it like this. So our cap sleeve is out. It will not be too deep, just a bit covered, a very bit covered cap sleeve. So from there I will join it to my armhole, and I'll also draft out my armhole line. I'll use my French curve to do that. First of all, I'll mark out my armhole curve, and from there I'll connect this line to, I'll make it to be a bit curvy. I'll connect it to my armhole, and as you can see, our cap sleeve is out. You will see this type of sleeve in most of the skin illusion neckline you see on Instagram and other places. So this is how to get a cut together cap sleeve. You are likely to see this type of sleeve in bridal dresses and wedding gowns. So the next thing that I'll do is to measure my bust points, but before I do that I'll introduce my bra cup. So once you're using your bra cup, automatically you won't need your bust points. All you will use is your underbust, because you can't measure your bra cup, but you come in by half an inch from the center first before you place your bra cup. You come in by, you can see where I made 2 dots there. You come in by half an inch, so that half an inch will serve as the space between your 2 breasts. So from there you place your tape over the bra cup and mark your underbust. My underbust for this dress is 14 inches, so that is where my underbust is. My half length is 17.5, but due to I'm making a basque waistline will always come down a bit from your half length, so I marked 18 inches, and from there I'll go down by extra, if you want, extra 6 inches plus 1 inch in my down. You can make it extra 5 inches or extra 6 inches. Then I'll go ahead and draw my lines. The basque waistline that I'm making for this dress is not the triangular one. You know, we have a triangular basque waistline, but for this one I'm making a kind of round basque waistline. You will learn a lot of tips from this tutorial. This one is more like a curved bust waistline, not the sharp triangular bust waistline we normally do. So the next thing that I will do right now is to take my body measurement. Before you take your body measurement, place your bra cup. Remember to place it, to go in by 1/2 inch before you place your bra cup. So I'll take my bust measurement plus 2 inches seam allowance. I'll be using net from the shoulder to the underbust. So there will be a net from the shoulder to the underbust. Then the rest will be fabric or underbust corset. Sorry, I made a mistake with my labeling, so I rewrited it. So this is my underbust, this is my half length, and this is my underbust. Like I said, if you're using a bra cup, you will not measure your bust point because your bust point is encompassed the bra cup. So I've measured my bust measurements, and the next is my waist measurement. Some of you might be asking of that. I won't be using that for the down part. I'll only use a bust dart for this dress. So I'll add bust dart to it. And from the half length, I'll curve my basque. So I'll try to illustrate the basque shape we all know. Then from there, I'll derive the one that I want. The basque shape that we all know is the straight one. We have the round one also. Like this is the triangular one. Let me just trace it out so that you understand what I'm saying. So this is the triangular one, but I'll not make this basque a triangular basque waistline. I'll make it a round, a kind of a round or curvy U-shaped basque waistline. So this is what I have. This is the type of basque waistline that I'm going to do. So I'll cut this bustier into two. This bodice, I'll cut this bodice into two. I'll cut from the underbust. Like I said, my skin net will start from the shoulder and stop at the underbust. Then from the underbust down to the basque waistline, the fabric will continue. So I'll cut out my neckline, my shoulder, and my cut together sleeve. You don't need to cut this sleeve from the shoulder. It will be together with the skin illusion net. So from the shoulder to the underbust is out. It is out now. So this pattern has helped us to trace out from our shoulder to our underbust, then from the underbust to the basque waistline. So I'll cut this one on my main fabric, on my doll face, and the upper part I'll cut it on a skein net. So this is what it has. Remember that this is on fold. Remember that this is on fold. So the next thing that I will do is to introduce a pattern paper for the back. I am done with the front. The next thing that I will cut is the back. And for the back, I'll also have my skin illusion from the shoulder to the armhole point, and the rest will be fabric. So I'll place these bodies on the back pattern. And for a basque waistline, we all know that the back part will stop at the half length. The front is always longer than the back, so the back part will stop at the half length. So I'm trying to add my zipper allowance. The back will also have this cut together sleeve, you know, that you join it at the shoulder. So I'll cut my shoulder and I'll mark, this is my half length. This is where the back part will stop. Then I'll cut the armhole and I'll cut down, and when I reach the half length, I'll stop cutting. So I'll cut from the half length. Remember to add your 1 inch seam allowance at the back, at the down part of the back, while cutting on the fabric. So I marked where my neckline will stop, and I'll add my this is my zipper allowance. So I'll draw a line there so that I'll know where the yoke for the back will stop. The yoke will be a V-shaped yoke. It will be a V-shaped yoke, and from there you can measure the length where you want it to be. From the shoulder, I'll measure 8 or 9 inches downwards. This is where my yoke for the back will stop, and I'll draw a straight line there. This is where my yoke for the back will stop. I'll label it. The next thing I'll do is to connect a line to the zipper allowance point. My zipper allowance will not extend to my shoulder. It will stop at the zipper at the point where my yoke started. I don't want my zip to cross my yoke. I want it to stop at the point where my yoke started. So that's why I stopped my yoke at the zipper allowance point, and I cut out the zipper allowance for the yoke. I don't want my yoke to reach there. So I'll mark my dart. I'll mark 4 inches, and I'll subtract half an inch on both sides of the dart. And that is it for my back part. This is my yoke, and this is the fabric part. As you can see, the zipper allowance did not extend to the yoke part. And that is it for my back part. And I'll go ahead and start cutting out on my fabric. The first thing that I will cut is my skin illusion. So this is what this is what I'll use for my bra cup. So I'll cover this bra cup. I'll not leave it bare. So I'll fold my fabric by 6 inches. In order to fold what will be enough for you, you fold your fabric by 6 inches and fold it over again by 6 inches. Just fold it as if you want to cut a peplon. You cut a circle, then you measure 6 inches round. You measure 6 inches. The bra cup that I'm using is size 40, so I'm cutting 6 inches round because this is what will be enough to cover my bra cup. After cutting my 6 inches round, I will cut it out. I'll cut this twice because I have 2 bra cups. I'll fold again. And cut out. So after cutting this out, this is how it will look like. You have 2 circles. So I'll place them together and I'll fold it into 2 equal halves, and then on the diameter I will determine the midpoint of the diameter of the circle, and on each point I'll go in by 1.5 inch. On each point of the folding, I'll go in by 1.5 inch and then connect like this. From the 1.5 inch you connect to the center, and from the center you connect to the other place where you marked 1.5 inch. And if you open it up, this is what you will have. It will look this way. So you will join that, and with it you cover your bra cup. I'll show you guys the sewing video. The sewing video will come up next after this video. It is very long, so I couldn't accommodate the 2. I divided it in, I had to split it into 2. So this is the part 1. I'll upload the part 2 very soon. So I folded my skin net, and I'll place my pattern on this. But there's something that I want to show you guys. If you're using a bra cup, don't cut out this exactly. Remember that this bustier doesn't have a dart, like I told you. You place your bra cup under the net in order to determine what will be enough for you to avoid mistakes. You have to I'm trying to fold my skin net into 4 because I want to have two pieces, it will be double. So I'll cut out the rough part. So if you place your pattern paper on this skin net and cut straight, fine. But if you insert your breast cut under it, you will notice that the length will reduce. Okay, let me show you something. I have marked my half length now. I have marked from my shoulder to my under bust. Now this is where my under bust stopped, and if you measure it, it will be 14. But if you place your bra cup under it, let me place the bra cup at the other bust line and remeasure. If you remeasure, you will notice that it will no longer be up to 14. Like, look at what I have here. So you have to place your bra cup under it and mark 14, then add 1-inch seam allowance. Understood? Make sure you place your bra cup under the net before you measure 14. This is where I marked my initial 14. You can see my initial 14, and this is the second 14, and then my half length. So make sure you place your bra cup under your net before taking your under bust measurement, before measuring from your shoulder to your under bust. If you use your pattern paper, you are going to run short of fabric. So I've cut from my allowance, and I'll cut out the sleeve. As you can see, I have 3 blue lines there. I have the former under bust, the second under bust, and then the allowance. So make sure you place your bra cup under your net before you cut, so that you will not run short of fabric. And if you place your bra cup under your illusion net, this is what you are going to have. Then you can cover it with your trimmings. If you want, you can leave your bra cup bare, but I don't want to leave mine bare. I'll cover it with my fabric before I place it under this screen net. And remember to embellish this. Remember to cover it up with your trimmings. So I'll cut the yoke for my back. I'm done with the front, the busty part. So I'm trying to cut my yoke for my back. So I'll place it this way. I folded it into 4 because I want to have two pieces on each side. I want to double it. If I make it single, it is going to tear any moment. So I made sure that I folded it into 4. Then you add half inch as your allowance. So this is my yoke. Next thing that I will cut is the down parts of my front and my back. Remember, I have cut my two for the shoulder to the under bust. The next thing that I will do now is to cut from my under bust down to the basque waistline, and I'll use my satin fabric to cut it first. And after cutting on the satin fabric, then I'll go ahead and cut on my lace if you're using a lace. But if you're using just the satin, you cut only on the satin. So I folded it and I'll introduce my pattern. This is from the under bust down to the basque waistline. So I will add half an inch at the under bust line, because this is where I will join the up and down together. This is the point where I'll join the up and down together. So I added half an inch for seam allowance there, and this is how it looks like. I hope this is not looking weird to you, because I still have my allowance. I'm still going to trim it down while sewing. I know everything might be looking weird, but with time it will come together. So The next thing that I will do right now is to cut the down part, is to cut the fabric part of the back. You know, I've cut my yoke for the back. Now I'm trying to cut the fabric for the back. So I have my zipper allowance. I inserted this zipper allowance so that it will be clear for people that want to add zipper to their own. But if you are going to lace your back, if you are going to tie the back, you will remove this zipper allowance. Instead, you will also you instead you will, instead of adding zipper allowance, you will remove your zipper allowance and also remove 2 inches from the back. I don't know if you understand. You trim out this zipper allowance and you also trim out another 2 inches from the back so that the back part will be open. I prefer the lacing because it helps in snatching your waist. So I want to show you the second method of cutting an underbust corset. This one I'm going to use a princess dart. This is if you want to pad it. So I'll measure my shoulder, I'll measure my bust point. This one will be a princess dart. I'll measure my bust point 11, underbust 14, and then I'll add 2 inches seam allowance. Remember that it will not reach the half length. It's not reach the half length because I've cut out what I'll use for my half length. This bustier will stop at your underbust exactly. Remember that, because the corset that we are making is an underbust corset, so it will start from your underbust. That's why my measurement stopped at my underbust and now added 2 inches for seam allowance. So I'll mark my 4 inches for my princess dart, 4.5 at my nipple points, 4 at the underbust, and 4 at the allowance. This is not half length. I'm not using half length for this one. Then I'll connect my lines. The next thing that I'll do is to subtract 2.5 inch at my underbust and curve. So this is a princess dart. This is if you want to use a normal padding for your underbust corset. So I'll mark my neckline 3.5 by 4, and I'll connect the round neck. I'll cut. Then I'll also cut out my center piece. I'll cut out my neckline, my shoulder slant, and I'll notch my underbust. The reason why I notched my underbust is to know where the wording will stop or where the pad will stop. Then I'll cut out my breast cut. I'll cut it out and I'll cut out my armhole. So you place this one to overlap the other like this, and you take your waist measurement plus 2 inches and your bust measurement plus 2 inches, and you go ahead and cut. The next thing that I will cut is my lining. Remember that I will not cut the back for this because the back is the yoke back that I cut with the back up. That's the back that I will use. If you want, you can cut a normal back. After cutting this, just cut. If you want it to have a yoke at the back, just cut a normal back, just a normal back with your normal half length. This time it will be a normal, to reach your half length. So I'll cut out my wording, and after cutting my wording, I'll gum it with my iron. So I'm cutting my wording for my breast cuts. And after that, I'll cut this on my lace fabric. I'll cut my upper part on my lace fabric, and I'll place my lace fabric on it. I've added my wording to my fabric. Sorry, and for this chalk part I'll still clean it off, I'll place my, I cut on my front so that you guys will see what I'm marking clearly. So I'll place my lace and I'll go ahead and join. And this is my, I'll introduce my center front. This is my center front and I'll place my lace fabric on it. And I will use my stitch or my hemming gum to hold it down. Please, if you have any question, drop it in the comment section. I'll gladly answer your questions. So I'm done cutting my lace, and the next thing I'll do is to go ahead and join. I've joined it and I've ironed it so well. So this is from my bust, from my shoulder to my underbust plus allowance. Then I'll fold this way, and from this, after folding this way, I'll cut my yoke. You can go as deep as 8 or 10 inches if you want your cleavage to show. So I've cut out the yoke. I love cutting my yoke after I must have finished joining. So this is what I will use to cut out my yoke. This thing that I've traced out now is what I'm going to use to cut out my yoke. So I'll cut this out on a skein net, and that is it.